Hi, I'm Cynthia, the Serenity Warrior Mama, and today I'm joined by Marlo, who is a friend of mine and an expert in energy. So today we're going to be talking about energy for empaths. So I posted a question earlier this week about how does an empath protect their energy? And it's a really interesting question because the answer might be you shouldn't. So we'll find out a little bit more about that. So let's first talk about how this shows up for us moms with spirited children. So one of the things that happens is when our children get frustrated, we automatically become frustrated. We have a very hard time having empathy for their situation, which is sort of a paradox because as empaths ourselves, you think we would be able to have overflowing amounts of empathy. But in reality, empathy is something very, very different from an empath. So when our child is angry, that anger automatically transfers itself to us. And we have a very hard time getting around that energy. And so we automatically just feel angry. So that's one way it's really showing up for us. And then social anxiety. Things like you go to an open house at your child's school and if you have a spirited child like mine and your spirited child has gotten in trouble or occasionally hurt another child in their classroom, when you walk into an open house, you're really feeling very anxious about the looks that you're receiving from other parents, and you can actually feel their stares and you can feel the energy that they're projecting towards you because they're looking at you thinking, I know your child hit my child last week and I don't like you very much and I think you're not a very good parent. So this is something that's really painful for us. And it comes up, pretty much every time we have to go to a school function because we feel like everybody's looking at us. We feel their stares and their energy that's directed at us. And then lastly, kind of just going out in public and always feeling exhausted and drained. Before I was an empath, before I knew I was an empath, I didn't realize what was going on. I would go out into public and I would come home just completely exhausted, and I didn't understand or know why. And it was really frustrating for me. The kids wanted to keep going. And I was like, no, mom's got to go home and relax. Like, I need a break. I'm exhausted. I know we just went to 2 places, but I'm exhausted. I really need to come home and have a break. And so that's kind of how these issues show up for moms of spirited children as empaths. So I already talked a little bit about the real problem of the first one. That anger that's coming from our child to us is really just being transferred from one person to another. If we're not careful and we don't know how, we're unable to stop that transfer of energy. So it's important to know how to stop that transfer of energy. And then in public, that exhaustion that we feel in public or at an open house, that angry stare that we're feeling really is a transfer of energy. You're not just being paranoid. You're not just thinking, oh my gosh, how do I look to these people? You really are feeling their energy because they are thinking certain thoughts in their head. They don't need to say them out loud, but they're thinking those thoughts and they're feeling these feelings, and you're picking up on it. You're feeling what they're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing happens when you're out in a public place and you go to, the grocery store, for instance, and there's people everywhere and you're trying to move your cart, from side to side to get out of the way so that there's a little bit of space for you. And by the time you're out of the store, you're completely exhausted, you're frustrated, you're probably screaming at your child because they're not sitting still or they won't give you the peace and silence that you need in that particular moment. So that's kind of how these things show up for us and kind of what's really going on behind that. And so all of these things can really make us want to protect ourselves. It makes us want to put up this shield of protection to keep these energies out. And what Marlo and I want to talk about today is that there's another option. We don't necessarily have to protect ourselves from these energies. So Marlo, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about what the other option is?
Yeah, great. Hi, everybody. And thanks for having this conversation, Cynthia, because I think it's so important because I'm of the mindset that not only is there another option, but you should actually stop protecting yourself because it's what's actually causing a lot of the depletion and the exhaustion. So if you just think about what are the needs, or what are the reasons we need to protect ourselves? What are some of the emotions that you feel come up with that? You have
Like you have fear, you're scared. Yeah, you really, anytime you want to protect yourself, it's usually because of fear.
exactly. And so right there, we have already set up the stage that the world outside of us is not safe and that we are not safe. And what's even worse than that is that we don't trust ourselves and our capacity to be in the world. And so what ends up happening is we get smaller and smaller and smaller. So we start avoiding going out, into public places, or we stop putting ourselves out there. So our worlds just get smaller and smaller and smaller. And that weakens us and that exhausts us. And so what I feel like needs to happen for people, especially empaths, is to learn how to expand our energy so that it's bigger than ourselves. And so we have space. We are allowed to take up space in this world. And I share in one of my trainings about going to this event with a lot of healers. And I'm kind of walking around, we're doing a engaging activity. And I come up against, I start communicating with this other healer, and she is like prickly, and like there's barrier, and like there's no like play or engagement or flow between us. And being the empath, I left thinking there was something wrong with me. So that natural tendency of like, oh my gosh, she knows something about me that I don't know, and that's why she's not very loving or kind the way I think a healer would be. And so I just sat with that. And then later she's on stage teaching us how to work with energy. And one of them was how to protect ourselves. And she was teaching us how to put up a coconut shell around our body. And
that's pretty prickly.
That's what I was feeling. I was feeling all the little prickly hairs and just that firm, strong coconut shell. And if you think about, creating any kind of barrier, or we're not only trying to, we're not letting in the energy that we think might impact us, but we're also not letting in the beautiful energies of healing and flow and abundance and prosperity and compassion and all those things. And so I'm really big on strengthening the energy so that it's solid in the sense of there's no tears like in our aura, or it's not leaking, because that's a lot of what's happening too, is we're leaking a lot of our energy away so that we don't have a lot of reserves for ourselves. But when we can strengthen our energy, then when other people look at us differently, or, in a way that's not very kind, it doesn't really filter in. Like our aura is our filter. And so it's really important that that's just one of the energy systems that I feel is really critical, is having our filter strong so that we are safe, and we have the capacity, we build up our capacity for what we're able to be with.
So we're still letting the good in, and we're able to filter out the bad.
Yeah. And also we're able to be more present with our kids, with our family members, with wherever we are. And, it's just knowing that you can be yourself wherever you are with whoever you're with.
Right. You don't need to avoid the grocery store. You don't need to avoid the open house. You don't need to avoid all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can handle them.
Yeah, it really creates more freedom. And, it's different for each person on how long it takes to build up the energy systems to be strong, but it's important for people to do it that way versus the protection, which is already setting them up for failure in a lot of ways.
Right. So Marlo, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Oh, thank you. Well, I focus mainly with healers. So I heal healers. And because as healers, we are up against a lot of sickness and scarcity and struggle. And we just have really big hearts that want to really serve in a really big way. But when we are depleted, it's harder for us to show up. And I used to be a professional organizer before I was aware that I was an empath. So I was purposefully putting myself into chaos and stuff. And I would leave feeling drained, and it was not a good experience for me or for them. And because I didn't really know how to manage my own energy, let alone support them in theirs. And it just started depleting me to where I had to leave that profession and start doing more life coaching. So there was more distance between me and the client.
Right.
Because over time, I just progressively had to get less and less in front of people to where I felt like my world was really small, and I knew I was meant for something bigger. And what all of this has allowed me to do and to share with people is that when you can expand your energy so big that you allow other people to spend their energy, and you don't have to take on, you don't have to be overly responsible for managing or manipulating anybody's energy, including your kids or family or spouses. It's been really huge for me to just let my husband have his experience and his energy and not take it on as something that I need to do anything with. And it's been really powerful to know like what's mine and what's not mine.
Right. Right. That's a really important point, Marlo. And I just want to speak to it for a minute because part of what I teach is really how to build yourself up so that you don't take on other people's energy, mainly your children. Because if you're constantly getting on the roller coaster with them, they're having a bad day and you just hop right on and all of a sudden now you're having a bad day, it's no use to anybody. You really need to be able to let them have their own energy and just say, okay, you're going to have a tantrum right now. And when you're done, let me know and we'll have a conversation about it. And you really, really need to get to that space because until you get to that space, you're constantly at the whim of your child's behavior. And so I talk about finding serenity amidst the chaos. I'm not here to try and make your children perfect little angels because it's never going to happen. It's not even possible. We've got spirited children, and yes, I can help you alleviate some of the behaviors that they will have. Certainly I can, but I'm not here to make your children angels. I'm here to help you build yourself up so that you can handle it with less ups and downs, kind of having a shock absorber, if you will, where, it's like this instead of like this, we want much smaller bumps in the road. And that's what I aim to do basically.
Yeah, I love what you're offering moms because I think that's so important. And I think it's a huge gift that you're giving the kids too, because what also happens is that we will have energy stuck in our body and stuck in our energy system, so that if we don't have a way of going through the emotions to completion, then we have blocked them. And they are going to show up as disease or some kind of illness or pain in our body, in our physical body. So everything works with energy first. And I think it's just really important to let the kids on a lot of levels, like release all of that energy, because emotions, that's what they are, is energy.
Right. I talk a lot about, allowing our children to have their emotions, because when I was really struggling with my kids, one thing I noticed is that, I wasn't allowing them to feel their emotions. When they got upset and angry, I didn't want to hear about it. I was like, no, stop. We're not going to scream. We're not going to, have a tantrum right now. You're going to stop that right now. And I was really just shutting it down for them. I wasn't allowing them to have this feeling come up. And I wasn't telling them it's okay to have that feeling. And I wasn't telling them I wasn't helping them through what is that feeling, how to release that feeling. I wasn't helping them do any of those things. And now that I get it, now that I really understand that they actually need to have those feelings, they need to know that it's okay, and they need to know how to release them. And so those are things that I work with my kids on every single day, and things that I can definitely teach to help you teach your children how to do as well. So that's a really important thing that you brought up. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, you're doing some amazing work with these moms, and I just feel really honored to be able to impart just the importance of to stop protecting yourselves. Even though that's like the first thing you want to do.
It is. It's kind of, a natural instinct to want to protect. You have this something coming at you and you don't like what it is. You want to put up a shield and say, stop. No. But in reality, that's definitely not the best way to go. So thank you so much, Marlo, for sharing that with us. Do you have any other things to share, or?
Just the few things that showed up as you were just saying. So I'm going to just trust that they're important to hear. And one is that just to pay attention to, because I think sometimes, especially as sensitive as we are, to recognize when we're being triggered by something, you know, and where let that be an indicator of, oh, that's where I could do a little more healing. So I don't know if you've read The Untethered Soul or not, but it's one of my favorite books. And I mention it only to share like this, his example of like, let's say you get a rose thorn in your skin or your arm. And when you bump up against it, it hurts. And so what we do is we pack all this different kind of protection and gauze and stuff around it, so that way, oh, don't bump up against my arm, or let me like even cut my arm off, or, you know, like do some really weird stuff when really all we need to do is just remove the thorn. And I think that's a lot of what you do with your releasing techniques too, is like, let's just remove the triggers, because then there's nothing to protect ourselves from too. So there's kind of an interesting balance here. It's like strengthening your energy systems, but it's also doing the work to remove the triggers, so that if somebody says your hair is purple, you don't freak out. Or,
Right.
Or, you know, or if somebody is looking at you and you, where it just doesn't affect you to the depth, because you know what you're doing with your kids is what you're doing with your kids, and feel confident in that.
Yeah. That comes up a lot, honestly, you know, not just at open houses, but all the time. I mean, anytime you're in public and your child is misbehaving, people are looking at you like, get control of your child. What is the matter with you? Don't you know how to parent them? So that it definitely comes up a lot for moms with spirited children, not just empaths, but, you know, pretty much every mom who's dealing with that.
Hear a lot about what other people think, realizing that they're judging us through their lens. And so it's just, getting clean and clear ourselves so that they can have that and it doesn't affect us.
Yeah. Well, Marlo, if anybody wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that? What's a good way to get in touch with you?
Well, I am in your group, so they can just connect with me there. Like I made a comment under the protection comment, or they can just go find me on Facebook. Marlo Nikkila is my name. Spelling is Nikkila. And if there are any healers out there, you're welcome to come into my Peaceful Magic group, and we'll learn more about the energies of creation.
Thank you, Marlo.
You're welcome. Thank you for doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Okay, so if anybody has any further questions about this subject, you'd like to give me a call, you can either send me a PM, an email, or you can send me a PM or an email at support@whatyouseekiswithin.com, or you can book a call with me if you'd like at serenitywarriormama.com/apply. It's been great with you here, Marlo, and I'm so glad we got to have this discussion. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.